Paolo, great to meet you. I've been looking forward to this for a while now.
Likewise, I'm excited to chat.
Obviously, my accent's not American or Canadian. So I'm from New Zealand originally. And I kind of feel like my hospitality career probably started there a little subconsciously. And I feel like it was really a serendipitous thing. Like it wasn't super intentional, but I just was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, the idea of, hundreds of years ago, whatever, if someone came to your door and knocked on your door, the custom was to offer them a drink and some food and offer them hospitality before even inquiring about what they need or who they are or anything. And I think that just has always kind of stuck with me. So I ended up moving to the States. My dad's from Cleveland, so I have dual citizenship. So I moved over to New York right after I graduated, essentially, and ended up starting my career in residential and kind of hopped around a little bit. I did some more retail kind of focused projects, and then, ended up at Parts and Labor. They'd just started, and they, are primarily hospitality focused, and that just kind of resonated with me.
So had you done hospitality prior?
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I hadn't. I'd mainly focused on residential. And then I think the thing that for me I've always loved about hospitality so much was the offering that it gives to kind of the urban fabric a little bit. It's more, I love residential projects. I absolutely love them, but there's such a personal connection with the, individual.
You get into detail.
Yeah.
It's about that personal connection with the client.
Totally. Yeah, the way somebody lives versus the way somebody socializes. And so I think hospitality for me has always been about like that kind of offering. Like, what are you giving to the social environment that the city that it's in? Like, whenever we start a hospitality project, it'll be based in location and kind of, I think I sort of see hotels in particular as like the new town square a little bit. It's like the gathering place,
of course,
right?
Yeah. Which is kind of what they used to be as well, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think especially in a city like New York, I mean, we do projects across the country, all over the place, but I think in a place like New York, every, apartments are so small and all of that. So a lot of the socialization that happens is outside of the home, and it kind of it's like the neighborhood living room or something like that.
I've always been kind of in this world. I worked for a number of studios kind of growing up. I studied art design, interior architecture. And so to me, this idea of hospitality has always been really exciting because it is this idea of you have so much flexibility to kind of create these entire worlds. It can be really conceptual, it can be very big. And so it was something that I was always really drawn to. And I feel like it is almost like a combination of all of the parts of our world, and it kind of touches on residential and product design. It's experiential. And so I've always found it really, really exciting. I mean, was there a typology that you're like, oh, I love doing restaurants, or is it hotels?
I think it's both. Like, I think the thing that I love about hotels, the heart and soul of them always feel like the restaurant or the F&B offering, the bar potentially.
Yes.
So I kind of feel like there's that synergy there. A lot of our projects are just F&B or bar restaurant projects, but when it's a hotel, I think it kind of becomes that anchor point for them, and that is that place that everybody kind of congregates and comes together. It's also where I think the locals get to mix with the traveler, right?
Right.
And I'm sure that's kind of your experience too.
Yeah. I mean, for us, like the idea of like, we love doing these one-off projects as well, and it's cool because from our standpoint, the client's so invested in that one venue that you're really getting into like some deep minutia. But doing the hotel piece is really exciting because for us, oftentimes we're either doing similar, like a single venue, or we're doing the entire project. So all the guest rooms, the public space, restaurant. What I love about that is all of a sudden now, in my mind's eye, we're creating a film. It's like we're creating this whole crescendo, and we're able to build this whole experience and shift it. And so for us, that gets quite exciting because then, that restaurant could be more energetic, and then the lobby could be more subdued. And so this idea of really kind of, we'll say, narrating that experience is really something that I love. It's really exciting. And I would say, early on for us, I don't know how it was, by the time you joined Parts and Labor, but for us, like early days, I mean, we were designing everything, even if the client didn't really appreciate it.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was just like really diving in, and we knew that we were putting much more into these projects in the early days than, maybe we needed to.
I mean, I honestly still feel like that now.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if
That's
you do, but
reassuring.
I feel like we're
good.
constantly, like our team's always having that conversation of like, where you need to kind of draw that line of
Right.
like being like, hey, because you do give your heart and soul.
Yes.
And I think it's like when a client will ask, they're like, so what do you cover? I'm like, oh, if you let us, we'll cover everything. We just
Right.
need to actually be more
Yes.
restrained. Yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your process and just how you guys approach a project and how your studio sort of, I guess, crafts that initial seed.
I'd love to not start with any precedent images and just talk about how we want to feel in this project, because I think it starts kind of resetting. Because sometimes I think with the work that we do, the pace could be quite fast, as I'm sure it's the same for you guys.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy to just dive right into like where it needs to end up. And I love to keep it kind of much more high level and really kind of, we'll say, starting from a place where we don't really know where we're going to end. So I feel like that is exciting. And so we'll start with kind of what it wants to feel like. And then I think it's really trying to kind of figure out the big idea, the thing that's going to anchor it. Like, what is this project about? And it's a tricky one to kind of uncover. Sometimes there might be a film as a reference point, especially maybe for an F&B project. So always trying to find these kind of abstract starting points that hopefully will lead us down a path that is less expected. I think this is kind of usually how we start.
You're like pulling a thread of kind of like identity from nowhere almost, right? Yeah.
Genuinely, when we're in our process, we try not to fully spell out the design and leave room for just
that natural evolution.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Natural iteration. So it's an aspect that I really love, but it is a lot of, while we're in that process, experimentation. And what I don't like to do is kind of check in that process while we're kind of
breaks that flow.
It breaks the flow. And I feel like I don't know that requesting feedback before it's cooked helps. Because really that ideation, that maturation stage, it's so important. I would say in the last couple of weeks is really where things shift.
The magic starts to happen. You feel it, right? You start to see it. Yeah.
And I always say with the work that we do, it's like that last 20%. That last 20% really makes a massive difference. And that is where we're able to kind of push things just that bit further, where it feels a bit different.
I agree with that. And I think it's interesting. We're actually working on a project at the moment in Moab, which in Utah, it's like desert rock, red rock country, like very kind of interesting landscape. So our concept phase, I feel like it was really obvious to us kind of what it should be. Like it was easy. It was this, beautiful concept. So we've got this like great foundation, but translating that into actual design isn't as obvious sometimes. And I think to me, that's where what you're saying, it's like that you need a certain amount of time. Like that's what design is. I think when it comes to hotels, but also bars and restaurants, definitely starting with a sense of place. That always feels really important. Like, grounding it and understanding the local community. What are people going there to do? Right? Like what experience do we want to give people? So I think it's like there's a context that we always want to start with, and then layering into that kind of more like emotional or ethereal concept, which, as you said, it could be a movie, it could be a piece of art, it could be a piece of music, it could be literally anything. We often will also draw from taking a lot of inspiration from other designers, whether that be fashion or jewelry or, all of those kind of things. And I do think like process for us is so precious.
Right.
It's kind of, I think, a big part of like our job as leaders and the sort of client facing face is about communication. We live and breathe this. It's second nature to us, but like somebody that's coming along has never heard of schematic design.
Right. No, this is it. And I feel like we take for granted that sometimes we are speaking a different language. Were there those sparks in your upbringing that kind of started to set the foundation for kind of where your career ended up?
Yeah, it's funny. I think the older I get, the more aware of it I become. I had a very non-traditional upbringing. I grew up in very rural, remote, off the grid New Zealand wilderness, essentially.
It sounds like my dream travel destination.
My dad originally is from Cleveland, and he was in the Vietnam War and moved over and is the quintessential Vietnam vet, where he's was super against the man and hated America, and like he knew like one person in New Zealand and moved over. And so my upbringing, like we grew up in a caravan on this gorgeous like farm property that my parents owned. I don't know why they didn't build a house until my brother and I started going to high school. So they were just very much like run free and that kind of thing.
Cool.
My experience of that, like obviously it was a gorgeous childhood. It was like all about exploration and, connecting with nature and everything that New York City isn't. And I think it just kind of led me down a path of deep curiosity. From a very young age, also just had a deep desire to travel. And I think that those things combined, like my curiosity around people's environments, where they exist, whether that be a home, whether that be an apartment, whether that be whatever, and then just the larger world, I think kind of has led me down the path of where I am today and, what I do, I guess. Again, not very conscious, but I think now as I'm older, I'm able to kind of reflect on that and go, oh yeah, that sort of makes sense, So what about you? You grew up in Toronto?
So I grew up in Toronto. So I'm first generation Italian.
Oh,
so my
cool.
dad first came over to Toronto in the 60s.
Yeah.
Didn't like it actually.
Okay.
And went back to Italy. Met my mom, got married. My older brother was born in Italy.
Okay.
And then in the late 70s, my dad, so we're from a small town outside of Rome. And my dad just kind of looked around and said, hey, like, what am I doing here? I'm going to go back. And he started building a family. Very, I would say, culturally diverse upbringing. So actually, a funny story, I don't tell this very often, but my first babysitter was Colombian.
Okay.
And so my first language was actually Spanish.
Really?
But no one in my household spoke Spanish.
Yeah.
And so it actually upset my dad quite a bit.
That's
so
amazing.
It was really kind of funny. So
he's like, it's got to be Italian.
Right, cabeza and like speaking
Yeah.
Spanish. And so I grew up in a very multicultural kind of upbringing. My dad was a carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were young kids, he would spend the weekends building furniture for a home. It was all kind of pretty simple stuff, but I just remember as a kid, very young, being in his workshop and just the smell, even today, like the smell of sawdust.
So nostalgic to you. Yeah.
So nostalgic. And so as a kid, I would always be kind of working with scraps of wood and it was always like, this was my play. There was something about being in that space that was magical. And I don't know why, but I was just naturally drawn to it.
Yeah.
You get into these moments. And for me, it was probably being back in a wood shop after like 15, 20 years, and it transported me right away. And you start appreciating kind of all of these little steps that kind of lead you down a certain path.
Also, I'm sure that like watching him make things, it kind of subconsciously starts to
it
go,
was a magical
yeah.
process. And I think there's something really beautiful about just woodwork. Like I often dream about, having a workshop and just like working with wood. There's something really beautiful
so
and
meditative
honest.
And like cleansing
It's
about it.
magic. Yeah, it really is magic. So Danu, tell me about, you travel, you are kind of insatiably curious. Like, how do you continually seek or kind of absorb inspiration?
I think there's two paths. Like one is definitely a conscious process where if it's sort of like if my brain's turned on the right way, I'll often be consciously looking for things. And it could be someone walking down the street past me and I'm like, oh my God, that fabric, I have to find it, those kind of things. And then I think part of it is that unconscious or subconscious side. For me, we've been talking a lot about that kind of continued curiosity. But I think for me, a lot of my life has become about experiencing different design moments, interiors, furniture, lighting, art, all of that. And so I think when I think about inspiration myself, a lot of it is being curious and open to experiencing other people's work, right? And I think that for me, that's sometimes about an aesthetic, but it's also just, the conversation we're having right now, I find this incredibly inspiring. Like learning about somebody else's process, hearing somebody else's passion, like to me, that's incredibly inspiring to me. And I think sharing and being able to absorb and connect with someone else's work does that for me a lot. But then I think there's other components to it, like you're mentioning travel, being in different natural environments. I think being from New Zealand, the natural environment has like definitely inspired me a lot, whether it's through palette or the materials that I'll choose for projects. But then I also think there's this really emotional side about it too, that, for me, a big part of what inspires me is a continued pursuit to create, that genuine, I don't even know where that comes from. I just have a deep desire to create. What about you?
It's interesting. I would say a lot of similarities. I mean, travel, anytime I discover like something new from the past that I don't know, a lot about, I'll always kind of buy some books and delve into research. But it was interesting. I was traveling with one of my directors last week, and we were at a Spanish restaurant. It was after the meeting, and they had Ferran Adria's spherified olives on the menu. And so I asked, the center, do you know about Ferran Adria? And I started recalling a story, and I realized how inspiring actually Ferran I've never met him, I've never dined that I'll believe, but as an entity was. And so when I started my studio, I went from working in practices that I feel like I did, but I don't know that I was really deeply thinking about what I was doing. And then when I started my studio, I spent a lot of time, especially in the early days, like solo, why am I doing this? What is the point? How can I talk about why this studio exists to other people, to future designers? And it was around the time that I really kind of discovered Ferran Adria, and I read his autobiography. And it was the most outrageously inspiring thing that I had ever read. And, I became obsessed with Ferran, actually. And so
I'm definitely reading this after this.
yeah, it's amazing. I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
Actually.
please.
I was obsessed because here was someone at the height of his career, had the top restaurant in the world, could have ran that, all year long, shut down for half of the year, just shut it down, took key members of his team to Barcelona, and for 4 to 6 months, they just experimented. And to me, it was just so outrageously conceptual. And the way that he would talk about their process, they would just start, and it's like, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to experiment with the mushroom. And so how can we rethink how to use a mushroom like 50 different ways?
Yeah, I love that.
The essence, the liquid, and there was the end goal was eventually they were going to create the menu for the next season. But there was that freedom where we don't know where this is going to end.
And it might end up nowhere.
It might end up nowhere, and that's totally okay. Because again, this is kind of part of the process.
It's the point of it, yeah.
And so for me, that was probably the most inspiring at that time, process that I had ever read about. And it was so pure and so genuine and so artistic and so conceptual. And so the connection to design and architecture was so clear to me. It was such an outrageously inspiring moment. And it was funny because I had not thought about that in such a long time until I saw, and I'd never had these olives ever. And I was thrilled that they were on the menu. It was like a nod to Ferran. And I'm like, this is a big deal. I'm explaining why this is so cool. This is science. And it connected that dot where, man, that was actually such a pivotal moment in how I would eventually think about our process.
There's a real elegance and refinement or, discipline in the idea of also shutting things down.
Right.
Just to be better.
Yes.
And I think that there's no guarantee that you're going to be better at the end of that, but it matters to you more that you're giving yourself that time and that you're pursuing that than the outcome does. And I think that's like incredibly inspiring. Yeah. What projects, I guess, either current or in the past that you find the most exciting or that you're proud of or that you even just want to talk about?
So we were in Saudi Arabia in January this past year. And so we were photographing 2 recently completed projects.
Amazing.
And that whole experience was just unbelievable. I think we were in Saudi for maybe 10 days total. And so it was the most ambitious shoot we had ever done, photo shoot.
Yeah.
And so we had 2 projects to photograph. They're about an hour apart from each other. And it was really magical. So these 2 projects, one is called Desert Rock Resort. And it's in this very remote part of the Saudi desert. It's in the mountains.
Incredible.
And we have guest rooms that are in the cave that are kind of carved out of the mountain,
amazing.
cantilevered off the mountain. There's guest rooms in the valley. And so basically the entire architecture is spread across the site. And we did the interiors for the entire resort. So we started that project in 2020. And then the other project that we shot is literally its opposite.
Yeah.
And so Desert Rock is elemental. It's of the earth. It's extremely pared back. And this other project is called Shabara. So this is in the Red Sea. And so it's about a 30-minute drive and then a 30-minute jetty ride to this island. And we designed the guest rooms.
Okay, beautiful.
This project we started about maybe 12 months prior to it opening. So
oh, wow.
yeah, fast paced,
really quick. Yeah.
really quick. We did the guest rooms. And this project is completely kind of future forward. So it's futuristic. It's looking forward.
Yeah.
And the guest rooms themselves are polished steel orbs.
Oh my
That are
gosh.
cantilevered over the Red Sea. And we did the interiors. And so for us, it was about kind of connected to the architecture. And so this is really, I would say, our most recent completed work.
Have you done much work in Saudi, or is
These were the first projects.
Cool.
Yeah. So Desert Rock was actually the first one. So this was in
Okay.
2020.
how was that experience?
I mean, it's wild. It really was incredible. I would say what I love most about it is the expectation is super high.
Yeah.
Especially for these projects. I mean, I always say the intent of some of this work, and these projects are examples of that, is really to reposition a country.
Yeah.
Like this is about building global tourism in a place that there really has never been global tourism. And so to me, these asks, we don't take lightly. There's a lot of complexities working in remote locations. Again, the pace on Shabara was really quite intense.
It's aggressive.
needless to say.
Yeah.
12 months. But
Good on you guys for doing it.
right. This is why I was actually at full black hair when I started. Now very gray.
12 months later.
12 months later, completely gray.
I can't wait to see them. They sound incredible.
How about you? What are you?
The Moab project is one I'm really excited about. And I think because of the sense of place, similar to, as you've been describing that, there's also a really interesting limit on construction there. So our property is going to be one of the last hotels that goes up at all. So I think that's kind of given us a bit of a different perspective on responsibility. And also there's an opportunity to bring a different level of design to the area that, hasn't necessarily existed. So we're really excited about that. I think something that I love doing is working on projects that are in unique and interesting and relatively remote areas. I do think that it's a little bit of where more luxury hospitality is going to, is this kind of adventure. I don't know, was it I think Condé Nast or something came out lately with the wild swimming is the most luxurious experience. And I'm like, I think it's leaning that way a lot. So I do love being a part of that. I think most designers would. I definitely think being from New Zealand and having that remote connection, I find really inspiring. But, we're doing a very boutique property in Napa Valley right now, which there's obviously a ton of hotels there, but I'm really excited about that. And we've opened a property in Nantucket last year too, which is very boutique, very beachy. And it was actually the first project that we'd done that had a real focus on being all the things that a design forward property should be, but also inclusive of families, which, I have 2 young children, and I think that I'm always looking for a destination that I don't have to compromise as, a designer. I'm like, I do not want to compromise on where I stay or my experience.
Right now we're working in Los Cabos. So we're doing a resort for Raffles. And it's really great because this property in particular is in East Cape. And so it's just kind of outside of, what's happening in Cabo proper. But there is something amazing about a remote location. And there's also something amazing about a market that's saturated. As we were saying before, relate to sense of place in a more meaningful way. How do we do something that feels more grounded and authentic? And this site is special because we have the mountains. We're on the beach, obviously. You've got the ocean. And so there's something kind of magical about that. And then another one that we're excited about is in terms of new projects, we're working with Auberge on a resort in Puerto Rico.
Oh, cool.
And so again, this is a full
Puerto Rico will
resort.
be
It's
amazing.
amazing. It's such a
Yeah.
magical place.
Yeah.
And again, just having that variation. I mean, one thing that I love the most is just kind of working in different parts of the world, working with different groups.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
feel
just so energizing.
so much gratitude for that side of it, right? Like being able to really experience different cultures and communities through the lens of design and through the lens of hospitality.
And I think there's such again, excitement and responsibility in what we do, because I often like to think, I mean, our work is bigger than the ask. It's never just a restaurant. It's never just a resort. But these are those kind of like formative experiences in people's lives. And there is something really profound about shifting the way people live in a really pure
Yeah.
kind of way. And so I think there's something quite powerful in the work that we do.
Yeah, and I do think design truly does shift the way
Yeah,
people live.
I do too.
100%.
I
I
do
think
too.
it is something that shifts their emotional state. I think their own aspirations, all of that.
How did you guys get into designing products?
Yeah, so I mean, we probably design, I would say, about 90% custom lighting and furniture in our projects. Like it's a
You've
really
always done that.
Yeah, we've always done that. It's a very high level of customization. I would say it's one of our core competencies. It's always been this idea of like, hey, should we actually launch something, do a sister company that is more focused on that. And so last year it kind of just finally came together. So we've launched Known Work, which is our sister company to Parts and Labor, and it's focused primarily
Was
on
this a long
product.
time coming?
It was, yeah. I mean, it really has felt like a labor of love, but also this kind of self-exploration and separating things a little bit. I think everybody was like, why wouldn't you just keep it under the same name and target it towards hospitality? And I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But I think coming out of the gate, we wanted to give it its own identity. And we also wanted to target it more towards residential because we're already in the hospitality world. So for us, it kind of made more sense to like just expand a little bit. And we did want to almost like democratize our product a bit because, people would reach out and be like, oh, where's this bar stool from? Or this light fixture? And we're like, well, it's for the client, and so now it's been this lovely kind of expansion and exploration into really focusing more on, the individual product.
So when I started my studio, I just knew that I wanted to ensure I was creating a practice where we're doing interior design, interior architecture, and designing product. So we still have our editions collection, and so we put out work usually once a year. But now we started collaborating with brands. So this is kind of a new kind of avenue. And so we released our first piece at Salone last year with Spotty, Claudio Spotty. So he has a collection called SEM. So we designed our first chair, which is really amazing. And so that was made in Italy. And that whole experience was so unbelievable because now we're working with, we'll say, a tier of manufacturers that we've never worked with. And it's super cool because it's really lovely for work to exist outside of a project. And I would say for us, it becomes a bit of a place to experiment, test ideas, which I think is great. But it's just selfishly, it's a lot of fun to work out into the world, isn't it?
Right? I agree. I think that's been a big component to it is just for selfish reasons is really fulfilling. And it's exciting to kind of explore business and design from a different lens. Paolo, I'd be really curious to hear what you think the sort of future of hospitality is.
I feel like there is a lot out there. I mean, there's a saturation right now in the market. When we think of a beach resort, like how many exist? And again, that homogenization where things kind of feel the same. And my feeling is, things are just going to continue to get more experiential. And to me, experiential could be like, I want to go to New Zealand and spend a night on your site where you grew up and like just really experience it here.
Yeah.
And I think to me, this is where things are going to continue to move is destinations that were never kind of on radar. And, part of that could be tied to, we might be seeking cooler climates. But I think this idea of what we're seeking from destinations now is changing. And I think this idea of beauty is changing. And it's no longer, that picturesque sand, ocean view is almost kind of not enough anymore because we've kind of experienced that. And so I do think things are shifting to become more experiential. I think the luxury segment is becoming more and more competitive.
Yes.
And so I think that differentiation through either context or design, I think is going to continue to be a huge thrust. And I think it's also tied to everyone's savvier than they've ever been.
Yeah.
Everyone's super connected and plugged in. I think the remote destination in parts of the world that, I would say wouldn't be on radar, I think are going to start becoming like the ultimate destinations.
I 100% agree. And I do think it ties directly with what luxury is and will become.
Right.
And I do think going back to that kind of like wild swimming thing or whatever, it's like the same, I think it's like with where the world is at with the internet and the exposure that everything has, I think it will become about just finding the most unique experience. And I think that that's exciting. It's also going to be really challenging, I think, to do it in a way that feels respectful to the earth, I guess, about creating kind of luxury destinations in really remote areas.
My strong feeling is luxury should be leading sustainably. And I think you're right. I mean, when you're working in these very remote places, like light touch architecture, being super sensitive. I mean, I love this idea of like subterranean architecture, anti-monumental.
Yeah. I love that though, luxury leads. I think that's really inspiring and a really great way to think about construction and hospitality and all of that, because I do think those type of projects, they do set the standard.
Yeah.
Those, developers, they set the standard, and us as the designers of those projects really set that goal.
Completely. And I think what happens is, it's easy to say, oh, well, luxury has higher budgets, but with any trend, it always starts at the top and then it trickles its way down.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, if the standard in the luxury segment is ultra sustainable, really forward looking, inevitably there's a trickle down effect where everything gets uplifted.
And I also think it creates, like you're saying, it's setting a different standard for what hospitality should be.
Exactly.
Has a bit more responsibility around it. As we see those projects go into these markets that are kind of untouched,
right.
I do think that being more and more conscious about the fact that you are now bringing a lot of people into these areas, that does come with thought, responsibility, kindness, and I think understanding of the natural environment more so. Obviously, all of these environments used to be untouched. And I think we have to be conscious about allowing some of them to continue to be untouched.
Our work is so much deeper than just designing the thing. And I think it has power to shift the way that we see the world. And I think that's a kind of powerful place to be. It's really
100%. And I think tying back to your, dad woodworking, hands-on building things, I also think that like a physical connection with nature, physical connection with craft and creating, whether that be food, writing, any of that, we lose that through the phones. But I do think because technology is getting so advanced, we have less opportunity to connect with hands-on moments.
Completely.
Like we're even reading books and touching pages and paper and all of that as much. So I do think some of that luxury experience might become more about going back to the
it's like the more complex things, the more we just are seeking like
the
this
opposite.
I don't know about you, but I don't ever get to do this. An hour and a half, like one-on-one, to just chat with someone that's in the same world.
Well, that was when
It's
these
cool.
guys reached out. that's literally, you're saying exactly how I felt. I was like, I'm really excited to meet you and just hear a bit about this, because I often think, I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually think it's something that's missing.
No, I know. But listen, if we saw each other at a party last night, it'd be like, oh, great. Oh, we work. Oh, cool. How's it
your
going?
work's
How's the
beautiful,
market? How are you
Yeah.
busy? How's your, and it wouldn't be this.
No.
This is,
And it's
super cool.
I think it's also incredibly valuable because lifelong learning, I always want to learn off other people, but you're right. You don't get the opportunity to do it much, and especially in an honest way.
Danu, I just want to thank you. I mean, selfishly, I don't get this opportunity that often, and to have this time with you has been really special and super inspiring. So thank you.
Yeah, well, look, I echo that sentiment, and I think that I am inspired by the conversation. I really appreciate you being so open and honest and sharing so much, and I hope we continue to chat. It's super valuable.